Hello, this is Renata. I want to try to record what this wonderful thing that just happened that has me happy dancing this morning. I cannot come on camera because I am not presentable, and I can't write a blog post because I have to get ready to go to a doctor's appointment. So I'm going to try to do this real quick. I'm not sure how successful I will be, which means I'm not sure if I'll actually be publishing this, but let me make a run at it. So I have been researching this person, Cheney Ross Thornton, with the hypothesis that she is my fourth great grandmother for probably a couple of decades now. The reasons for that are because when I find her on the 1870 census, I find her living amongst all my other Ross relatives, but she's head of her own household, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. And then the reason that I kind of pegged her as my fourth great grandmother and put her on the tree in that placement is because in 1880 she is living in the household of Mitchell Ross, Reverend Mitchell Ross, who you see right down here at the bottom of the page, minister of the gospel, and then you go to the next page to see the rest of his household. And Mitchell Ross has been someone that I have identified based on a number of documented clues as well as DNA evidence to be the brother of my third great grandfather, Everett Ross. Although I don't have anything on paper showing them to be brothers, I do have them something that an oral history that identifies them as relatives, but it just doesn't say brothers. And you can see his wife, Betty, and then you see all of their children that are in the home at that time here. And then at the bottom, you see Cheney Thornton, mother, which would mean she would be the mother of the head of household if it's enumerated correctly. And the head of household is Mitchell Ross. So I have her on my tree as being the mother of Mitchell as well as my ancestor, Everett Ross. So um, that's how she gets this position. But I have always been, needing to find proof of it. So I've been working for that for many years. And then I have Essex Ross as being her husband, or at least being the father of Mitchell and Everett Ross, because that is documented on several records that he is the father of Mitchell Ross. And so that's why he's there in the father position. So this morning, when I was supposed to be doing other things, and I really do mean I'm supposed to be doing other things, I decided to take a peek at my DNA matches, and I have a DNA match that I am sure, a new one, is a descendant of this family. And so that I was trying to use the through lines to put that DNA match on my tree, and that's how I ended up looking at all of this. So I ended up looking at the 1870 census again, and this is where I first see Cheney. Here she is right here, Cheney Ross, 65 years old. And in her household, there have been these people that I haven't really vetted out like I needed to. And so I decided today was the day to do that because if I could somehow follow the hypotheses that I have, vet these out and then get the conclusion I'm hoping for, then I would be able to tie it all together. So my hypothesis was that Linda Hedgepeth was probably Cheney Ross's daughter, and Betty Ross was also probably Cheney Ross's daughter, or perhaps a granddaughter that was living in the home with her. I wasn't too sure about Betty. But my concentration was on the rest of the people in the household who are all Hedgepeths just like Linda. My thinking is that Polly, James, Elijah, and Matthew were most likely Linda Hedgepeth's children. And then you have Elijah here, who's just 2 years older than Linda. And my thinking is that he either was Linda's husband or on a slimmer chance could have been if Linda is has been widowed, or that maybe he's an uncle, he's, like the brother of her husband or something like that. So I set off today to find out who these people were. So I started with Linda Hedgepeth, wanting to find some proof that Cheney Ross was most likely her mother, therefore making her a sister to my third great grandfather, Everett Ross. So I'm trying to click a tab here that is covered up by this drawing thing, and so it seems that I'm blocked from being able to show you the next tab because the drawing thing is in the way. All right, so here it is. I got to it some kind of way. So in researching, it took a few minutes, this Linda Hedgepeth, I found a marriage record, and it is from 1874. And remember, I'm thinking she's probably a Ross who married a Hedgepeth, and that maybe she had been widowed. And that seems to be true, or either widowed or just split up from, because here she is marrying someone named, looks like E.C. Hicks. Um, the son of David and Caroline Hicks, and the Hicks and Ross families in Littleton are all intertwined and married to each other. And then there's Linda Hedgepeth of Warren County, 50 years old now, Black, daughter of Burwell Ross and Nancy Ross. So I was like, that kind of didn't make sense to me. Could Nancy and Cheney have been the same person? Could, she have used both names? Could she have changed her name? So I started, to, get ready to dig around to find out what was going on with that, because I was still just feeling really sure that Linda was probably Cheney's daughter. So anyway, um, I go down to the bottom looking for any additional clues, looking at where they're married, River Township, that's where the family still is. I looked at who the witnesses are, and there's that Betty Ross right there. So again, we don't know exactly what her relationship is right now, but she's there, and went from there. So let's see what I'm going to have to do to be able to get out of this so that I can find my next. I guess I'm going to have to just pull it up from where I saved it. So I began to research that Burwell Ross because I had never heard of him, and I needed to figure out who he was. And as I was researching him, I found lots of records for a Burwell Ross in Kentucky, but I wasn't finding many for right here in Littleton, North Carolina, until I found this one. And this one got me very excited because this is a death certificate for someone named Jelena Thornton. Now that's kind of important to me also because remember, Cheney was named Ross on the 1870, but she was named Thornton on the 1880. So I held on to that. I'm looking at this and I'm seeing that Jelena Thornton actually died in Norfolk, Virginia, which is where my part of this family ended up migrating to right around the turn of the 20th century. And not only was she in Norfolk, Virginia, but she was on 42nd Street, which is where my grandmother lived. And so I was like, okay, this is so coincidental. My grandmother, my great grandmother, and my grandmother lived in a house on West 42nd Street in Norfolk that I actually owned until just a few years ago when I sold it. Um, she had been in Norfolk at this point that she died in 1912. She had been there for 14 years. So she moved there right around the same period of time that my great grandparents moved there. She was 57 years old, but look at who her parents are. Burwell Ross and Cheney Ross. So if this Julina, if the clues on her death certificate are um, supportive of my hypothesis, then this Julina would have been a sibling of perhaps my third great grandfather, and also perhaps a sibling of Linda Hedgepeth, who eventually married again in 1874. So I was so excited, and you can see that the burial took place in Littleton. So she was taken back to Littleton to be buried, and it's just enough to give me the connection that I needed. But now I need to figure out if I descend from Burwell Ross or Essex Ross. And I do believe it's going to be Essex because unless all the people who have Essex on their tree are wrong, um, I'm definitely DNA connected to all of, like, descendants of all of his children. Uh, the other question is, could Essex be Burrell? But, those are always questions you have to look for. I know I haven't told the full story, but this was just so exciting for me because this one document ties this family together for me and gives me a new stepping stone to continue this research.